You can heat anything with a heat pump. You could even heat a shed in the middle of the Antarctic. And the less kilowatts per metre squared required, the cheaper it's going to be to run. To check if a heat pump's going to work in your specific property, you need to check 4 main variables. But before we do all of that, you need to do what we always do in every scenario, which is a heat loss calculation for your specific property. We've got a cheat sheet for that here, and we've also got a video to help you use the cheat sheet. But basically, here's the amount of watts per metre squared for your specific property. Simply multiply these amounts of watts by the floor area of your property. Once you've worked out your heat loss, you've got the most vital piece of information. This tells us how big the heat pump you need is going to be. If you need a 28 kilowatt heat pump, for example, this might be significantly difficult and expensive to install and perhaps just not be worth it at all. More on that in a bit. Thankfully, the average heat loss in the UK is between 6 and 8 kilowatts, so generally relatively easy. It's also worth noting that all heat pump installation should be looked at in conjunction with heat loss and insulation. They shouldn't be looked at as a sole solution. It's a two-way approach. So after doing our heat loss, the next thing to check is, are our radiators big enough to support the heat pump? Just like gas boilers, heat pumps also work more efficiently with lower flow temperatures, and to make the running costs viable against gas boilers, you really need them at a maximum flow temperature of around 50 degrees. And if that's achievable or not is down to how big your radiators are. Now, we've actually written an article and a cheat sheet for you to work out exactly if your current radiators are already big enough to work with a heat pump and have a maximum flow temperature of 50 degrees. Read the article over on heatgeek.com and/or have a look at the supporting video that we've also created on our YouTube channel. And remember, radiators can't be too big. The bigger your radiator, the more efficient your system is going to be, provided your controls are correctly installed. The next thing to check is your electricity supply. Now, you need to check how many amps you're being provided with. If you have a look at the main fuse coming into the property, it will be printed on that. Typically, you'll find there'll either be 60 amps, which is lower, or 100 amps. Overhead cable power lines are normally about 60 amps, as opposed to the 100 amps that come in from underground. You then have to deduct any other high drawing appliances from that, for example, car chargers, to see if you're left with enough capacity for your specific heat pump. But clearly, the lower your heat loss, the smaller your heat pump, so insulation is your friend here. Now, if you have a 60 amp supply, this can be enough if you've got like a 7 kilowatt heat load or 7 kilowatt heat pump that you need to power. If you need a larger heat pump, they're going to be taking around 17 amps. So if you also have your car charger on and your hairdryer or your toaster or whatever else, you might start seeing the fuse go, which will become a nuisance. It's also worth bearing in mind, if you've got a 60 amp supply, it can be upgraded to an 80 or 100 amp supply free of charge in some cases, so worth contacting your supplier to find out if you can get that. Now, if your heat loss is above 14 kilowatts, you may need a 3-phase electrical supply, which is a bigger commercial electrical supply, or you might have to put in 2 units. So that's worth bearing in mind as well. The next thing to check is obviously if you've actually got enough space for it outside. For permitted planning, which means you don't have to do a planning application, heat pumps must be 1 metre from the neighbour's boundary. They've also got to have good free air movement. It can't be in a light well, for example, because the surrounding air will just cool down and the efficiency will tank. Nuisance noise is also a consideration to bedrooms that may be near the unit. And for more information on that, take a look at our heat pump noise calculation video. And lastly, have you got space for a cylinder? Now, most properties have a cylinder. If you have a combination boiler though, which instantaneously heats the water, you don't have anywhere to store hot water, heat pumps need a hot water store. So you'll need somewhere for a big 600 ml wide tank to store the hot water somewhere. If you found this useful, let us know in the comments, and also don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button because that helps us a lot. If you're looking for a heat pump install, be sure to check out our HeatGeek map and have a look at our HeatGeek Assured Guarantee service, where we guarantee your heat pump installation. More on that in the link in the description, and I'll catch you on the next one.
If you're a consumer and would like more advice on renewable heating, check out our Consumer Series playlist here on HeatGeek for all you need to know about renewable heating and energy.